Well, welcome to the October 17th, 2022 session of actually October 18th, 2022 session of Tangerine SDR and Hamside technical session. My name is Dave, KV0S. And this week I've been working a little bit with Tom McDermott, and we're trying to get organized and going. So we're getting bits and pieces done, but I don't know if we're unified yet. So next on the list is Nathaniel, W2 NAF. Go ahead, Nathaniel.
Thanks, Dave. Pretty much same thing here as usual. Just running around trying to keep the research going and working with students and I'm very excited to actually have some real Tangerine hardware in hand. W2NF, back to net.
Very good. Next on the list is Dan, N4XWE. Dan, are you able to talk? Not hearing you. Dan said he just moved and he's having trouble finding all the pieces to get back on.
Did you call on me, Dave?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I was just still looking for my camera. So as I had mentioned earlier, I just moved. So I'm finding stuff that I haven't seen for 3 or 4 years, and I'm losing stuff that I saw last week. So I'm not sure. There's always a plus and a minus associated with moving.
Yes.
Anyway, haven't done much with radio the last week or two, and I'll leave it at that. Back to you, Dave.
Say, Dan, are you willing to tell us where in the universe you are now?
I'm actually in Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay.
We have another person in Alabama.
Okay. Very good.
Oh,
and next on the list is Mike, AAAK. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, thank you. Greetings to everyone listening. Back to you, Dave.
Nice to see you again. And actually see a picture of you, Mike. So next on the list is Bill Engelkey, AB4EJ. Go ahead, Bill.
okay, fine business, Dave. Good evening to the net. Been working with the students, and as far as this project goes, we're going to probably provide a function that allows you can upload and make an observation as long as you wish, multiple days, multiple months. However, that becomes impossible to download once it goes more than a month or two. So we're going to use the facilities of digital RF and split out, in other words, give you the ability to see the dates of data in an observation and pick a day at a time to download, because most of the time people are going to want to use a day at a time. And looking at a spectrum of a day is interesting because you can line that up with various things like satellite data and magnetometer data and other things like that. So we're working on that. Also, there was a news article about a gamma radio burst that came from a distant galaxy, and it was strong enough. It's the strongest gamma radio burst so far recorded, and it was strong enough to trigger a sudden ionospheric disturbance on the Earth. So going to be looking at the data for that. That was just a few days ago, October 9th at 13:20 UTC, in case anybody wants to take a look at that. So back to net.
Very good. Thanks for the information, Bill. Next on the list is Bob Strickland. Go ahead, Bob.
Hello, everyone. I just wanted to check in and try to keep up with what's going on this project. So back to you, Dave.
Okay. Next on the list is David, KE5DPZ. Go ahead, David.
Good evening to all on the net. Just trying to keep up with what's going on. Got to work on some antennas today and trying to do some analyzing of those an infed and trying to keep building a station together. Anyway, I hope everyone's doing well. Notice Nathan had a jacket on, so obviously it's a little chillier up north than it is down here in Texas. Anyway, with that, 73's KE5 DPC back net.
Very good. Yes. My location is predicting the first frost of the year tonight. So next on the list is David McGaw in 1 HAC. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, good everyone. Good evening, everyone on the net. Very busy these days, working on Antarctic power systems. We're working on our AM Doppler system, doing a redeploy, and we have designs on Jay Schwartz's backyard, I believe. We'll probably be getting in touch. Trying to expand it out from just the Northeast to out to the Midwest. And from my eye would be very nice pattern for when the that eclipse comes through. Oh, also I don't see Scotty on here yet, but been looking into the programming side of the new hardware, because I realize I've got Verilog data acquisition code, but it's for a Stratix 4 process FPGA. And I looked at this before and I can't get a straight answer about how easy it is to take Stratix stuff and move it over to the Max family. But code is code, so I'm not too worried about it. Back to net.
Fine business. And next on the list is Don in 1VX. Go ahead, Don.
All right, it's K1VX, and despite the
Oh, sorry. What?
line, I no longer live in New Hampshire. I'm retired and living in eastern Tennessee near Knoxville. And any of you that are affiliated with University of Alabama, my condolences. But anyway, yeah, I checked in here once, I don't know, 5 or 6 weeks ago, and I've been looking at the recordings of the sessions for the last few weeks, kind of trying to figure out what I might be able to do to help out the program here. And something that occurred to me is it looks like some of these components are kind of going into integration and maybe a little bit of testing. My system engineering background hasn't completely evaporated in the 3 years since I retired. So I think there may be an opportunity that I could help to sort out the procedures for putting these things together. Maybe some of the documentation that's going to go with them. Possibly also help out a little bit with debugging. I'm not an expert on Raspberry Pis, but I have done a fair amount of Linux, so that's not totally alien turf. And I need to learn Python, I think. So maybe this is an opportunity for that. C is my first language, so not alien to programming by any means, but Python would be a new thing for me. So maybe I can help shake out the documentation for how you put these things together and get them up and running, and try to come up with some clear, unambiguous documentation to hand out to people when they buy these things, and bring them up live on the air, on the internet, whatever. So just a thought. So you see anything if you heard anything that you think might be interesting, let me know, and we'll see if we can get plugged into it. I do have a fair amount of time on my hands being retired. Don't have that ugly WORK thing kind of nagging at me. So we'll kind of keep looking around, and if anybody sees anything or you think I can help you out, let's chat. So back to you, Dave.
Okay, I'm sure we can find something for you to work on and get you tied in. Bill, I didn't want to say anything, but I did see that the guy from Tennessee is the one that had to bring it up.
Yeah, well, you know, those things happen once every 20 or 30 years. Got to be prepared for that.
Okay. Next on the list, we have Dev. Joshi, go ahead, Dev.
Good evening, everyone. It's been a while. I was not in this meeting. I thought I should check in today. I wanted to say hello to everyone. I'm doing well in Iowa, and I actually came to see if I could have a brief chat with Nathaniel after the completion of this talk. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I hope everyone is doing very well,
Well,
despite me not coming here.
yeah, we're happy that you're doing well, and you're welcome anytime.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's see. Next on the list is Dylan in KN6 IVW. Go ahead, Dylan.
Yeah, I've been doing good. Still moving. So, Dave, I was. No, Dan. You can't forget about the boxes where you think you put something in there and then find out that it's not in there. You can't find the box anymore. You can't forget about those. So, my week's been pretty good. I started working on learning Python. I was trying to learn coding HTML a while back when I was younger, but I didn't really understand that a lot when I was younger. So I'm going to take a shot at it and start with Python. At least I've heard it. Videos I watch, so hopefully, I guess that's but I'm trying that out. So, I don't have anything else. So let's get back to that.
Okay.
Dave.
Okay. Your sound was just a little garbled, and then of course you had typing in front of that. So you're typing and the garble kind of made it hard to understand, but we can tell you're learning Python and that you're getting involved. Next on the list, we have Human Kim, KD2 MCR. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Good night. Yeah, there's not so much to say other than NJIT students is working with Bill Engelke, I believe, to migrate the data to his system, and so that we can our magnetometer analysis tool can be integrated with the entire HAMSI personal space weather station system, so that we can have all this data in one place and then analyze things in one place with the HF system. So other than that, I don't have anything to say. So back to the net. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the list is Jay Schwartz, WB8 SBI. Go ahead, Jay.
Howdy, gang. As I was listening here a few minutes ago, someone mentioned my name. So, what may I be of service to the crew? Other than that, I really have nothing new to report this week. So, how may I be of service to the assembly?
As you may remember at the Hamsci workshop, you offered your backyard or whatever to cite one of our radios for Dartmouth.
Oh, okay.
I believe you did.
Yeah.
So,
I still have a power line running across it that I am working very hard to get removed.
well, we'll talk.
So yeah,
There may not be a problem for our system.
okay, yeah. Do you have my email address?
Not sure. Must
It's my
have.
call sign at arl.net.
Oh, that works. That's fine.
So look forward to your email and we'll go from there.
Very good.
Otherwise, nothing new here, gang. Take care, stay safe. Oh, and by the way, somebody mentioned the weather where they are up in Michigan's Upper Peninsula along Lake Superior. They got 4 to 8 inches of snow and 50-mile-an-hour winds. Down here in the lower part, where outside Detroit, we got rain. 7-3, back to net control.
Okay. Next on the list is James, KG4 DSG. Go ahead, James.
Evening, Dave and the group. Not much going on here. I've got a out of town wedding to go to this week, so not much going on in the shack. With that, back to the net.
Okay. Next on the list is Jim, K4 BSE. Go ahead, Jim.
Good evening. Not a whole lot related to this going on. I have spent an awful lot of frustrating time. I have for years and years been using a certain well-known financial management program with my bank, and they have played pretty all this time and been able to pay bills that way, and it's been no problem whatsoever. Well, there must be some engineers at the bank, because they figured if things working right, they need to change something. And sure enough, they decided to change something. And I have spent the last couple of weeks just tearing my hair out trying to recover from that, and scared to death my bills were not getting paid. I think I've got it working now, but it has really been an exercise in frustration. So needless to say, I haven't been doing much fun.
Well, sorry to hear that, but hopefully things will be better soon. Next on the list is Joe, W7LUX. Go ahead, Joe.
Good evening, everybody. Well, change something. Yep. My email still doesn't work well since somebody got in and changed something. So it's been a while and they're just not able to fix it. There is a significant dip in my signal strength for about 1310 on the 9th of October. So there's a chance that I did catch that gamma ray burst. It's a few minutes earlier than had been reported at 1320, but there's definitely a pretty strong dip there. I've been working on portable antennas and the looking for what I can do to provide the best science for the upcoming eclipses. I hear a lot of different possibilities. I'm not into QSO parties, but if there's something else, I'd sure like to hear about it. Thank you, Dave.
Very good. Next on the list is Jonathan, KC3EEY. Go ahead, Jonathan.
Hi, everybody. It's been a busy week. Me and Nathaniel were working on the step 2 proposal for the NASA grant that will fund a VLF study, and we were able to get it submitted for step 2. So I'm very, very excited about that. There was first Whistler of October that was captured on the VLF system. I was going through the data, and unfortunately on my monitors, my VLF monitors, I did not capture anything on that gamma ray burst. Absolutely nothing. And I'm talking about NAA and NML, NLK and NAU. Absolutely nothing, not a thing. So it's kind of a bummer. Everybody, you know, there were more. There was more of an effect over in Europe than there was in the U.S. At least where I am. There were a couple locations in the U.S. that were able to observe a significant effect, and just like Joe mentioned, it was probably seen in the grape data as well, but there was nothing at all in the VLF transmitter data for the Springbrook location. Lastly, I was working on installing a satellite antenna, not amateur radio related, but I've always been interested in what I could receive over the air, whether it be natural radio or an AM FM radio or shortwave, and even seeing KU band. So I attempted to mount the mast on the side of my house, and because of the heights, I just could not do it. I'm not a fan of heights, and I did not feel comfortable with the slope of the roof, and I just couldn't do it. So luckily, I looked on the internet, and I called a bunch of people, and there was a guy that installs free-to-air systems and Dish and DirecTV. So he came over and he installed my satellite antenna. He had the mast leveled and the antenna fully assembled within 20 minutes, which was a lot quicker than what I would have done. But he was having trouble finding the signal that I wanted him to look for, and it turned out that his meter was outputting 13 volts, and I use a commercial LNB, which is driven by 18 volts, and anything below that, it won't work. So 2.5 hours later, we finally realized that his meter is not outputting 18 volts, and that's why that we can't get any signal. So he used my meter, and he was able to peak the antenna, and everything's good to go. The only thing is that he has to install the new LNB that I got. Right now I'm using an older LNB that was over 10 years old, but that's still kicking actually. But so anyway, I have good signal and everything is working. That's all I have. Back to the net.
Well, thank you. I'm going to jump and get to Tom in 5EG next.
Okay. Hello, Dave.
Hello.
Good evening to everyone in the group. It's been a busy week. The hardest part was restringing the Starlink cable, which was too many trips up to the roof. Of all the things to fail, a passive cable that went outdoors failed with no signs of wear, tear, damage, or anything else, but that's all done. Let's see, first things, ran a test on how many files change in preparation for using GET as a version control system. And the smallest change to to the project changes about 1,000 files. So if you change a constant and recompile, you get 1,000 file changes. Those, I think, are all binaries produced by the platform designer synthesis and Quartus HDL compiler. So we have some work to do to figure out what kind of a get ignore file to make. The problem is our version control system is supposed to help people find what changed. And if somebody changes one line of code and they get a listing of 1,000 files, it's not real helpful. And so we need to do a little work there. Dave came up with a great suggestion as to how we might organize a couple of different gets. I'll let him talk about that a little later. I think his approach is a real good one. I've had a couple of emails with Kong at Nguyen, and he is working on a couple of sub projects for us, even though he's on summer vacation. One of which he's working on the document for the FPGA architecture. He had some suggestions, so he's gonna add some sections there. And then he's going to look at running the Verilog simulator under Quartus. That does not work on Linux due to library problems. And so Kong is, if it works under CentOS, that would be a real help to the workflow. Being able to simulate Verilog in the tool that we're using would probably be pretty useful. I wrote the I2C driver for the C code to talk to the I2C control port on the receiver module. It's not working yet. Scotty helped me figure out what switches to flip on the development board to be able to program it. So we're now again able to load the FPGA image that brings up the 1 gig Ethernet, brings up the socket interfaces, and that's working again. The C code to talk the local host to data engine protocol is back up and working, and that's printing out correctly. I've got some debugging in the config channel to do. The provisioning channel looks like it's working, still trying to track down a couple errors there. Along the way, it's been about a year since this was all running, and computers don't stay put for a year. And so some things in Python that worked a year ago don't work this year, particularly when you ask the socket library what the IP address of the host is. It used to give you the IP address of the host. Now what you get is the IPv4 address and 3 IPv6 link local addresses. And a link local address is not routable. And so there was some code had to change in the drivers to strip out all the link local addresses and just return the routable address. That's up and running. And we can bring up the sockets to the FPGA with the adapter board, the receiver, and the clock on it. But I'm not yet able to talk to the peripherals. Hopefully that's getting close. All of the I2C interfaces appear to program a little differently. And so the C code is set up with a table where you tell it what module number and what slot number something is on, and the table is programmed with, is it an SPI or is it an I2C interface? If it's I2C, what device is on it? And so there's a whole bunch of modules in the C library that get selected depending on what the table tells it the interface is that the protocol is trying to talk to, since every chip seems to have a different way to talk to it. So that's what's been up the last week. Back to the group.
Okay. Yes, I've been participating with Tom a little bit, and probably after Scotty talks, we'll talk a bit more about that. Next on the list is Scotty, WA2 DFI. Go ahead, Scotty.
Well, hello.
Hello.
Your time.
You look like you're in a chocolate factory.
Yeah. It's a Magneto pie factory.
Yes.
a few boards behind me there. Yeah. Anyway, not a lot going on this week, except I did get the parts for the Magneto Pi kit, so I'll be able to send the kit out to David and Bill. And I want to make sure with Bill, is one sufficient for you? Is Bill still here, right?
Yes.
Yeah, if one's sufficient, and then I'll be sending a dev adapter out to David also. Tomorrow's going to be shipping day, so it's like my camera.
Sounds good.
It bumped here. Anyway, that's it for me here. So back to you, Dave.
So Scotty, I have a question for you. You may be aware of. In part of this work that I was doing with Tom, we were looking at the Tapper GitHub, and there is a Tangerine SDR directory with nothing in it. And the three administrators are Annalise, George, and John. I've asked John about it, but I haven't heard anything. But
so you want, he can make you administrator if that's what you're asking?
Yes, but
okay, yeah, I can rattle his cage too.
There was a time when I moved the SVN over years ago. I was an administrator, and Annalise got mad at me.
Well, why?
Because I kind of made apparently a mess, according to her.
You made a mess?
Yes. Well, the SVN structure is really weird in the GitHub world.
Oh.
And so I just wanted to, I've talked to John about it. So next I'm talking to you, and I guess I need to talk to George about it. And I don't know how active Annalise is still on that particular site.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I guess it depends on how strict you want to get with what defines a mess. I mean,
Well,
you'd like to keep it separate, and then you can do whatever you need to do.
Yes. Tom and I were talking about this, and the intent is use the Tapper site for release components.
Yeah, yeah.
So that we're basically just putting the code that people will download and put into their hardware. And maybe the compiled programming.
Yeah, the SOF and POF files.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So really, that's all you need, because the especially when we get into ARIA 10 and such, that you're going to find out that you need a license to compile it. So not everybody's going to be doing that.
Now,
so, but everybody can load a SOF and a POF file.
Right. And what Tom and I were discussing, the proposal that we have is that we have 3 different kinds of repositories. One, a working one for the people who are actually actively working, like Tom, myself, Chong, and others, where there's some version of the code. We do think to maintain some open source credibility, we ought to put the V files somewhere that can be viewed. They would have to rebuild the whole Quartus setup, but at least they have the Verilog files available.
Well, I think that the V
And
files, but wouldn't they be better suited on the release site than on the working site?
Yes.
And
And essentially for OpenHPSDR, there are 3 kinds of files. The OpenHPSDR used RBF files as the release. They also have the Verilog files in that repository. And then we had a guy named Richard Koch work on the code for a while, and he put the QAR file up there, which is like
the Quartus archive.
Yeah. I don't know if the QAR file is appropriate to put there, but
Well, theoretically, with the QAR file, if you build it right, you can regenerate everything from that.
yes,
It is also rather large, so I don't
it's
know.
really large. That's the issue.
I don't know how much space we have on the repository, the TAPA repository for release stuff. But I'm kind of the opinion, I like the way HPSDR did it. And basically, we have a directory that says KV0S, W2DFI, N5EG. It's your own private directory, and you put your stuff in there.
Yes,
I don't really, and that's not really going to be accessible to the public, I would think, because this is intermediate stuff that the team's working on. And I see no reason to put .v files up there that aren't tested and do something. So you really want to make that part of a release that's useful to somebody. So if they load the RAM file or the ROM file and run it, and then they want to see what made that, then they should be able to load the source for that.
right.
But on the other hand, maybe we only put the latest revision and one back on the repository because they're so big. And by the time we get to Rev 20, nobody's going to care about Rev 3 anyway. So they might care about, well, I hope not. What do you think?
Did send Tom a bunch of open HPSDR V files to show him how certain things were done. So
Well, perhaps we shouldn't trash them, but they don't necessarily need to be up on a public site. People could ask for them if they really wanted Rev 3 and we're up to Rev 20. I mean, that's an awful lot of data to put up there that most people aren't going to care about. And then,
Tom, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, the kind of what we're thinking of, Scotty, is having two public repositories, one the binaries and one the source code. And the source code is not only the Verilog, but also the C source code, because there's the NEOS processor and there's a lot of C there. So we have a lot of that. And then one repository, and that depends. This is the development repository, which has got the structure and the settings files and the board support package and the pinout files, all of that stuff. And one of the questions that I've got of you, Scotty, is when we start using the licensed version of the tools, will it store intellectual property that's unencrypted in the directory?
The Intel IP that's unencrypted?
Correct. That's a question. When you're using the unlicensed tools, all of the intellectual property is encrypted in the folder. So the question I have is, if we go to licensed tools, will it store unencrypted versions of the files in that folder?
No.
Okay.
But if you have a licensed version, you will have access to the unencrypted versions to be able to recompile. So, I mean, the encrypted versions you can't look in anyway, but you can't even compile the encrypted versions if you don't have a license. So if we use Intel IP, then if you try to recompile, and I just had this experience today, if you try to recompile something that was designed under a licensed version that uses licensed IP, and you try to open it and compile it under an unlicensed version, the free version, it won't work.
Right.
Basically, that IP is missing, right?
My concern was that if we have a development repository, are we going to risk exposing Intel's IP in a public repository?
I think the short answer is they won't let you.
Okay,
Because
so
I can call out the IP, but it won't let you compile it. So that you can't look inside it anyway. It's still boxed in, or however they do it.
okay. So the reason that we asked the question is GitHub now allows free accounts to be both public and or private. There used to be a restriction that you couldn't have a private repository on the free tools. They changed that, and you now can have a private repository with free tools. And I was worried that if we had to protect Intel IP, that we'd have to put it in a private repository.
Yeah, I don't think that's a problem.
Okay.
I think the only problem I see is that if we make it a public repository for things that we're working on, we run the risk of somebody, loading something that's not working or not finished and then getting upset because it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but the developers need a repository to, to work with each other and to make changes and to do pull requests, put those changes into the Git, other people to bring them back. So we need a working repository for the folks actually writing C code, writing Verilog, doing the compiles.
Right.
We need a repository for that.
I understand that, but you could make that private, and then
Okay.
and then what you could do is you could say anybody who's interested, you could give them access to it, and not because the intent is not to keep people out. It's the intent to make sure they know what they're looking at when they go in there.
Yes.
Yeah, the difficulty with that repository is quite easy to check out something that is very thoroughly broken.
Right.
So how do you do it then? Just make it private and end it there?
You could make it private and then, tell people if they want access to email the administrator.
And then they could just ask for pieces. So they'll be able to look at everything, right?
Yeah, it's a Git repository. They could download the whole thing if they want.
Well, even if it's private?
Yeah, well, they have to be, if it's private, they have to get permission first to become a member. And then once they're a member, they can look at anything.
Right. So I guess that's the question, is that you don't make somebody a member that you don't trust? Is that the idea?
Yeah,
or do you not want to have it? You want it just for the developers? Because I kind of like to make it so that nobody can meddle with it, but everybody can see it. Is that possible?
That's not a problem. That's not a problem because only the administrator can accept a pull request.
Yes.
And if the administrator doesn't accept the pull request, nothing gets changed.
Okay, but he accepts the pull request on a case-by-case basis, right? Not on a, now you're a member, you can do anything you want.
No.
No?
It's a case-by-case basis.
Okay. Well, that works fine then.
Yes.
And that's on a private or on a public repository?
Either way.
Either way.
But then on the public repository, are there different member classes, people allowed to do a pull request and people who aren't?
No, anybody can make a pull request, but only the administrator can approve it.
Yes.
Okay.
It does not work like SVN.
Okay.
Right.
So you have a
Now,
gatekeeper then. You're all set.
I do want to remind everybody that since we did the open HPSDR, GitHub used to be an individual company, and it's now part of Microsoft, just in case you didn't know that. So GitHub is owned by Microsoft.
If we put code up there, do they get any kind of ownership of it?
No, they maintain the license agreements that they had before. It's just that they bought up the other company.
So this should be only a problem for people who have a heartburn against Microsoft.
Yes. But if anybody asks you, that's the current situation.
Okay.
There are other Git providers if it's a problem.
There is a GitLab, which is not associated and very similar. The trouble is we have a huge infrastructure of past Tapper projects on GitHub, and it would be another nightmare to move it again.
So is there really anything other than a philosophical objection to having Microsoft own it?
I don't see it right now. They don't own the code.
Yeah, I don't see a problem with this.
I don't see a problem with it either.
I just wanted to make people aware.
I think there's more problems with moving it somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, other than the recent distribution of CodePilot, where they're suggesting how to write your code based on code that's already in GitHub.
Cuddy, you're muted.
It's still only suggestions though, right?
Oh, yeah, it's called Code Pilot if you want to look at it. It'll suggest how to do something based on similar systems that are already in GitHub. It's an AI system. But yeah, it's not making it up on the fly. It's learning from all of the code that's already out there.
But this is an optional thing that you can follow or not. It's not required, right?
You don't have to use Code Pilot, but
okay.
The virtue of your code being in there, it's being used to train the AI.
Oh, I see. But it is still insulated from the users by the AI compute layer, if you will.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so you're safe. And besides, I mean, what's the worst that can happen if our test code gets out? So, I mean, it's open source anyway.
It's open source.
If you want to go hack it and take the
Yes.
code that doesn't work, be my guest. You know,
It's just, it does bother people who expect it to be compilable.
yeah.
And that's always
Managing
why,
it.
that's the main reason we hold it back till we know that it's clean.
Yeah. Managing
Well-
expectations, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
I guess you just have to put it very clearly in the README. You know,
If you use Git appropriately, the main line is compilable, the branches are development.
Mhm.
Well, and I think part of the disclaimer at the top of every piece of our code should be, we offer no warranty. So, you know, use whatever you can, whenever you can, and that's fine, but
Yeah.
don't come back to us if it doesn't do exactly what you want it to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, that's up to the user.
Up to the user, right?
Okay, so I think the conclusion is the development repository can be public because we don't need to protect against the inadvertent disclosure of somebody's licensed IP.
Right.
Yes.
So it can be
That's-
public. Then if that's the case, we just have to tell folks, this is the development version, and the only thing we can guarantee is it probably doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it precludes anybody from posting updates to our broken code while we're trying to fix
Well,
it, right?
And the nice thing is the release mechanism allows you to notify people that want to be notified that a release has been sent.
Right. So that's why, Dave's approach to having a release place, where the official releases are and the announcements of new releases will occur, all of that will happen. The development one ought to be small because most people won't be interested in, gee, look, we took one broken repository and we changed it. So it's still broken, but in a different way.
And the
Right?
other,
That's probably not of a lot of interest to most folks. The whole purpose of Git is to control changes and to let people know what changes happened. And so Git, at least for the development version, is structured so that one person's in control, right? Everyone can look at it, everyone can suggest changes. If the changes they suggest aren't clean, then Git will let folks know that there's a problem, and the administrator has the burden of merging the changes into the repository in an acceptable way.
so it sounds like perhaps the release repository could have only the latest version. And then if you want older stuff, you could go back to the developers repository and get them. Does that make sense?
It's easier. Git is much better than that. You can just update the releases and have a release repository. And you just tag the releases in there and people can go in and browse back, pick whatever they want. It's all automatic.
Okay, what about limitations due to size?
I don't know that there are limitations that would affect this project.
Microsoft at one point put the entire Windows source code in GitHub. It's one of the reasons they bought it.
Okay, so then we're not gonna
hundreds of megabytes.
We're not gonna have them come back and say, oh, you've exceeded your limit. You have to buy a
No.
professional version. I'm thinking of Dropbox is because they're doing that to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're
So-
75% full. You need to buy a real one.
Yeah, so remember the purpose of Git is to keep track of all of the changes along the path from where you were to where you are and make those changes visible so people can look at them and see what changed. And so a release repository can do the same thing. It can just have all of the binaries in there with the release history so folks can go back and see what changed.
And when you
Yep.
add a new release, there are notes to explain what changed and right.
Yes.
So okay,
That's right.
yeah, okay, good.
And this really is, I would say, kind of the standard way of doing things
Yeah.
these
Yes.
days.
Exactly.
Everybody's using GitHub.
Yeah, so that's the way I do the drivers for OpenHPSDR. They're on a Git that runs exactly like that. And you can browse back the entire release, revision, and change history of the project. And you can suggest alterations, and I decide whether they're good or not.
Okay.
Well, and also all the most of the OpenHPSDR code is there as well.
Yeah, the way the current Git is structured is there was a binary dump of essentially one file.
Yeah.
And so the Git archive of SVN is like it's one file with one release and no changes, which means if you want to download something, you can't download a part. You have to download the entire thing and then go fish through the zip file for what you want.
Yes.
And so that is not the way that you want to do a development project, of course.
Well, it's a philosophical difference between Quartus and GitHub.
Well, yeah, it's just when you're in the middle of a project, you can do commits and releases and control all that stuff. When a project's over, you don't have that history to do that.
Right.
So anyway, that was the suggestion. I think Dave's idea is good. We'll have the binaries in one repository and the workers, the working directory in another repository.
Sounds good.
Also, I happened to look at the Tangerine webpage again and notice that we have several things that we haven't kept up to date. So if anybody has things you would like to update, you can let me know and I'll try to get them done. I won't write your documentation for you, but I'll post content.
So
and I am trying to keep the status table reasonably up to date.
So Bill, is one magnetometer enough for you?
Yeah, I've got one of the original prototypes running and just one more that I can have the new design to work with. It'll be fine.
Okay. Okay.
I have a
Welcome,
question
soldering
for,
iron. Go ahead.
I had a question for Bill. Are you pulling the stuff off the Linode site?
No.
Okay.
I thought
you
Hyomin
need
was
to do
trying to
that.
do that.
Hyomin,
Yep.
were you pulling the Linode site? I was just wondering if Bill, if he wanted more data. There's 7 or 8 people posting on the Linode site. And until you give us instructions on how to send data to your site, you could pull it off the Linode site.
So yeah, if I understand correctly, yeah, Diego is trying to. So currently, I don't know how many. I believe 6 or 7 different sites.
Yeah.
And those data are being transferred to sort of temporary Dave Witten's server. So now we are actually rerouting those data stream to being Engelke's place. So
okay,
Really?
that's what we're working on right
First
now.
I heard of it.
Okay, well, well, we do have data archive, temporary archive that Dave Witten has been working on. Now, you know, we are in the process of integrating that kind of, you know, data archiving system into whatever Nathaniel is working on. I guess the entire HAMSci data porter service, so that, you know, all the data can be saved in one place and processed in one place. So
Right. So okay. So Hyomin, you haven't actually talked with Bill yet?
I believe Diego had a meeting with you, Bill, I guess.
No,
No? Oh, he said he will, he said he was about to do so. I don't know. Maybe he's busy with classes or something. So I actually spoke with him last Thursday or Friday that he would had a meeting with you.
well, I mean, it sounds like something that might have been mentioned very briefly, but it's my recollection of it was there was still more to be figured out, and I didn't make any. I mean, we can do it. We just have to talk about it. It's still kind of
Okay.
very much in the early talking stage. I'm
Okay.
not aware of that we've made any commitment to do anything. We can do something, but we need to figure out what it is.
Okay. Okay. But the main idea is that, yeah, currently the data portal that Dave Witten is running right now is not going to be our permanent home to the magnetometer data. So
But-
either
I'm not going to stop posting there till I have an alternative to post to.
okay. Yep. At
And
some point.
I have almost 2 years of data on one of the magnetometers.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, it's not our intent to stop doing it. Just maybe we just reroute the data.
Well,
flow.
I was just concerned. I didn't know if there was an alternative yet.
Well, there is. I mean, there is a way that you can upload to the ham site. We call it the ham site, the personal space for the station network server. There's just you have to go on to the PSWS network and sign up for an account, which is very easy to do. And then there is a Python uploader, which you put on, which will start pushing files to this website rather than to the Linode.
Okay. Do you still have them in a day format?
Yes, they're daily. Each one is called an observation.
Okay.
So the original intent was to combine the grape data with magnetometer data so that all the scientific contents can be seen in one place. That was the original intent.
That would make it easier for a scientist wanting to study
Right.
the data sets.
So I guess from my perspective, I don't think it makes sense to have like magnetometer portal somewhere and then HF data somewhere.
Yes.
So, yep. So I guess Diego has that idea. I think he has a big picture. So I think he will contact you to discuss all the details, which I don't really.
Yeah, I'll get with Diego.
Yeah.
Yeah, that all sounds good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and Dave, if you would like to, I'll get with you and we'll. I mean, you can always do both. You can upload to the Linode and also run the uploader to push to the.
Well, I can be a tester if you need me to.
Yeah,
I have
that
a
would be
working
another
system.
beta test. That would be another beta test.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I have a working magnetometer system. It's just where does it send the data?
Yeah, I'll send you some software for that.
Okay.
That sounds really good. That'll be really good to get all the archived magnetometer data into the new system, and then to, have Hyomin and Diego and their team, start to look at that.
So Nathaniel, is yours sending to the Linode or is your data do you have a magnetometer? And
I do have a magnetometer. It should be sending to both the Linode and to Bill's
Both.
server,
okay,
but I'm not sure if I haven't kept up with it to really make sure it's actually working.
oh,
No, nothing is coming from your system into the personal space for the station network, Nathaniel.
Okay.
That broke about the day after we set it up, and there's nobody's having time to work on it. So
Yeah, so at some point we'll have to work on it again. So hopefully it's going to Dave Witten's server. And if not, I have,
and Dave's Witten server is still up and running, and
yeah. And I certainly, I set it up to work with Dave Witten's server for the first, right when I got it. So,
right,
and I have never turned it off purposefully. So
yeah.
hopefully it's still going.
And if you had the fail safes set up for power outages, it should work.
Yes.
That's the only thing that ever interrupts mine is when I get power outages or if I have to work on the antennas.
Yeah. And I have definitely had power outages.
Yeah. I finally figured out how to get my magnetometer so that whenever the power goes out, I have it on battery backup, and it also has an auto boot and auto rerun the code with the cron and scripts.
Yeah,
So
and I think mine is set the same way.
It works well now.
yeah, my experience has been all this data collection stuff, because I'm running a grape as well as a magnetometer and various other things. You need a UPS. I mean, if you really want it to be reliable, you need a UPS that can keep it up and running for at least an hour. Because we have times when power goes out for 30 minutes here fairly regularly. So being out in the country.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm at my time that I need to go. I'm going to say 73.
Same here.
73. Thank you.
73.
Yeah, 73, everyone.
3.
Nathaniel,
Thanks, Dave. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Yeah, Dev.